So, we're going to start the second story to finish this book up. Hold Me Cowboy. I'm hoping I'm going to finish this book with y'all tonight, but we'll see. Sam McCormick has never met a more stuck up or more appealing woman more than Madison West. But when they're snowed in, will he be forced to admit that this ice queen can scorch him with one touch? Hold Me Cowboy. Okay. We're going to start at the first paperclip. Page 201. He let out a long, suffering sigh and stepped to the side. He didn't like Madison West. He never had. Not from the moment he'd first been hired on as a farrier for the West Estate 8 years earlier. In all the years since he'd first met Madison, since he first started shoeing her horses, he never received one polite word from her. But then, he'd never even given her one, either. And that's the only paragraph I want to share on that page. This might go a little quicker than what I thought, which is a good thing. Because there's a lot of passionate moments, hints at being a desire moment book. I'm trying to keep it at least PG with y'all. Page 204. She shrank back, a hint of color bleeding into her cheeks. Well, now that we've established that there's basically a no difference between you and a Neanderthal, I better get back to my dark, empty cabin and hope that you aren't a serial killer. Her sharp tongue left cuts behind, and he had to admit that he kind of enjoyed it. There wasn't very many people who sparred with him like this, possibly because he didn't talk to very many people. Is that a legitimate concern you have? I don't know. The entire situation is just crazy enough that I might be trapped in here, a horror movie, with a tortured artist blacksmith who is secretly a murderer. I guarantee you I'm not murdery. If you see me outside with an axe, it's only because I'm cutting firewood. She cocked her head to the side, a glint in her blue eyes that didn't look like ice making his stomach and everything south of there tighten. Well, that's a relief. Anyway, I'm going. Dark cabin, no one waiting for me. It promises to be a seriously good time. You don't have any idea why the power is out or how to fix it? He asked. No, she said, sounding exasperated and about 30 seconds away from stamping her foot. Well, damn his conscience. But he wasn't letting her go back to an empty, dark, cold cabin, no matter that she was always treated him like a bit of a muck. She'd always stepped in with her handmade writing books. Boots! I'll say it in a minute, I swear to goodness. I'm a little tired, a little worn out. It's been a day. Page 205. Let me have a look at your fuse box, he said. You sound like you'd rather die, she said. I pretty much would, but I'm not going to let you die either. He reached for his black jacket and the matching black cowboy hat on the hook, and he put both on and nodded. Thank you, she muttered, and he could tell that the little bit of social nicety directed at him cost her dearly. Well, I guess we're going to continue reading to page 207. Okay. They headed toward the front door, and he pushed it open, waiting for her to go out first. Since he had already arrived earlier, the temperature had dropped drastically. He had come up to the mountain to do some planning for the next few art projects. It pained him to admit, even to himself, that the solitude was somewhat necessary for him to get a clear handle on what was going to work out next. So, he said, making conversation, not so much for the sake but of needing it to needle her and to see if they could earn one of the patented death glares. Christopher, huh? Your boyfriend. That hot spike drove its way through his gut again, and he did his best to ignore it. No, she said tersely. Just a friend. I see, so you decided to meet a man up here for a friendly game of Twister? She turned slightly, arching one pale brow. Yahtzee, actually. I'm very good at it. And I'm sure your friend was hoping to get a full house. She rolled her eyes, looked forward again, taking a quick few steps over the icy ground, somehow managed to keep her sure footing. Then she opened the door to her cabin. Welcome, she said, extending her arm. Please excuse the shuddering cold and the oppressive darkness. Ladies first, he said. She shook her head, walking into the house, and he followed behind, closing the door against the elements. It was already cold in the dark little room. You were just going to come back here and sit in the dark if I hadn't offered to fiddle with a circuit breaker? Maybe I know how to break my own circuit, Sam. Did you ever think of that? Oh, but you just said you didn't, Madison. I prefer Maddie, she said. Sorry, Madison, he said, tipping his hat just to be a jerk. That's page 206, by the way. I should have just frozen to death. Then there could have been a legend about my tragic, beautiful demise in the mountain. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her until she sighed and continued talking. I don't know where the box thingy is. You're going to have to hunt for it. I think I can handle that. He walked deeper into the kitchen, then stopped when he saw 2 purple packets sitting on the kitchen counter. The heat returned a vengeance, and then he realized exactly what they were and what they meant. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers extremely guilty glaze. Yahtzee, huh? That's what the kids call it, she said, pressing her palm over the telling packets, only because they're too immature to call it. Use your imagination. Color washed over her neck into her cheeks, or not crass enough. In that moment, he had no idea what the devil possessed him. And he didn't particularly care. He turned to face her, planting his hands on the countertop just an inch away from hers. I don't know about that. I'm betting that you could use a little crassness in your life, Madison West. Are you trying to suggest that I need you? She asked with her voice choked. Lightning streaked through his blood, and in a moment he was lost. It didn't matter. He thought she was insufferable, a prissy little princess who didn't appreciate any damn thing she had. It didn't matter that he'd come up here to work. All that mattered was that he hadn't touched a woman in a long time, and Madison West was so close that all he would have to do is shift his weight slightly, and he would be able to take her into his arms. He looked down pointingly at her hand, acting though as she could see straight through the protection beneath. Well, he said, you have a couple of essential ingredients to have yourself a pretty fun evening. All you seem to be missing is the man. But I imagine the guy you invited up here is nice. I'm not that nice, Madison, he said, leaning in, but I sure could show you a good time. That's 207. So, Sam is quite the arrogant jerk, and Madison is quite the upper crust. Together, the two form like a firework going off. So, we'll just see where this goes. This is page 253. Have you seen Christopher? His question caught her off guard, as did his tone, which sounded a bit hard and possessive. It was funny because the taciturn man in front of her was more what she had considered Sam to be before they had spent those days in that cabin together. Those days where they had been together had been a lot easier, quieter. He smiled more, but then she supposed that any man receiving her was prone to be smiling more. They had barely gotten out of bed. They had both not been a little bit more than insatiable, page 254, but Maddie hadn't minded at all. This was a harsh slap back to reality, to a time that could almost have been before their little rendezvous, but clearly wasn't, because his line of questioning was tinged with jealousy. No, as you guessed, I lied to him, and I didn't call him. And he called you. Maddie lifted her fingernail and began to chew on it, grimacing, then realized that she had just ruined her manicure. He did call, she said, her face heating slightly, and I changed his name in my phone book to Don't Answer. Why did you do that? Obviously, you can't delete somebody from your phone book when you don't want to talk to them, Sam, and you have to make sure that you know who's calling. But I like the reminder that I'm not speaking to him, because then my phone rings and its screen says Don't Answer. And then I go, okay. I really do pity that man who ends up wanting to chase after you. Good thing you don't, except, oh wait, you're here. That was page 254. Page 259. You can't just come in here and start playing games with me, he said. I'm not a dog that you can call whenever you want me to come. He let that double meaning of that statement sit between them. That isn't what I'm doing, she said, her tone whoppish. Then what are you doing, Madison? We agreed that it would be one weekend, and then you come in here snipping at me. Suddenly you're propositioning me. I gave all in to this the first time because I'm a man, and I'm not going to say no in a situation like the one we were in, but I'm also not going to be the kind of man you can manipulate. Color rose in her cheeks. I'm not trying to manipulate you. Why is it that men always accuse me of that? Because no man likes to be turned on and then left waiting, he returned. The color in her cheeks darkened, and then she turned on one boot heel and walked quickly away from him. He moved after her, reaching out, grabbing a hold of her arm, stopping her. What? Now you're going to go? Now you're going to go? I can't do this. I can't do this if you're going to wrap all of it up in an accusation and shame. I've been there. I've done it, Sam, and I'm not doing it again. Trust me, I've been accused of a lot of things, and I've had my fill of it. So great. You don't want to be manipulated. I don't want to be the one to leave the affair feeling guilty. Sam frowned. That's not what I meant. How did it go after that? Gotta read the book. Okay, page 286. He closed the distance between them. Fine. We don't have to have this discussion, and and it doesn't matter to me either way, but you really think you should spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for a mistake that happened when you were 17? This is page 287. He took advantage of you. It isn't your fault. And apart from that, any of that, you don't deserve to be labeled by a bunch of people that don't even know you. That wasn't even it. And she stood there staring him down. She fully realized it had nothing to do with what this town thought. Nothing to do whether or not the town thought she was a scarlet woman, or if people still thought about her indiscretion, or if people still blamed her or David. None of it even mattered. She realized that in a flash of blinding brilliance that shone brighter than Christmas lights all around her, and the realization made her knees buckle because it made her remember the conversation that happened in her father's office, the conversation that occurred right after one David's students had discovered the affair between the two of them and began spreading rumors. Okay, next paperclip. Well, we're not going to read all that. You want to read it? Read the book. Page 292. You downplay what you do, she returned, from the art of physical labor. I've watched you do it. I don't know why you do it, only that you do. You're always acting like your brother is smarter than you, but he can't do what you do either. Art was never particularly useful as far as my father was concerned, Sam said. I imagine he would be pretty damn upset to see that it's art that keeps the ranch afloat so nicely. He would have wanted us to do it the way our ancestors did, making leather work and pounding nails. Of course, it always hard for him to understand that mass production was inevitably going to win out against more expensive handmade things unless we targeted our products and people who could afford what we did, which is what we did, what we've successfully with far beyond what we even imagined. Page 298. Only 2 more paper clips? Really? Maddie choked out a laugh that was mixed with a sob. That's what I thought. It really was. I thought he would be angry, but one of the things that scared me the most, at least initially, was the idea that he would take it out on David. And I still loved David then, but no, he was angry at me. I don't understand that. How's that possible? That was when he told me, she choked out, told me that he had his mistress, that it was just something men did. But the world didn't run if the mistress didn't know her place. And if I was intent on lowering myself to be that sort of woman, when I could have been easily a wife, that was none of his business. He told me a woman had his child and never betrayed him. Her throat tightened, almost painfully, a tear sliding down her cheek. Even if he saw me as the villain, even if my own father couldn't stand up for me, even if he thought it was my fault, somehow I was ever supposed to stand up for myself when other people accused me of being a... Maddie, that's why, she said, the words barely making their way through a constricted throat. That's why it hurts so much, and that's why I'm not over it. There are 2 men involved who said they loved me. There was David and the man I gave my heart to, the man I had given my body to, who lied to me from the very beginning, who threw me under the bus the moment he got the opportunity. And then there was my own father who should have been on my side simply because I was born his. I loved them both, and they both let me down. She blinked, a mist rolling into her over her sides, matching their setting all around them. How do you ever trust anyone after that? If it had only been David, I think I would have been over it a long time ago. Sam was looking at her with regret, with dark, intense eyes. He looked like he was about to say something, his chest shifting as he took a breath that seemed to contain purpose, but then he said nothing. He simply closed the distance between them, tugging her into his arms and holding her against his chest, his large, warm hand moving between her shoulder blades in a soothing rhythm. This only happens in books, kids. That was $2.98, $2.99. Well, it looks like I was to read all of that, but I want you to read the book, so I'm just going to read bits and pieces tonight. They talk about her insecurities, and he wants to work through them with her. Very rare. And of course, they have banter back and forth. And that's all you're going to get. I told you I'm going to keep it PG the best I could. Hold Me Cowboy gets a 20 because it's by one of my favorite authors, Maisey Yates. You got to read the book. Great book. And if you can find this just like this, I suggest getting it because you get 2 books in one. And that's better than getting just one book. So make sure you read this book. You won't regret it.